Good morning, everyone. I'm William Murray, Chief of Staff to President Delgado of Lehman College. Due to a last-minute commitment, President Delgado is unable to join us here today. I have the honor of standing in for him. As a great orator, President Delgado has left big shoes to fill, and I graciously thank him for allowing me to step in. Before we begin, I would like to express my gratitude to our dedicated teams from IT and multimedia, communications and marketing, institutional advancement, buildings and grounds, public safety, and of course, my team at the Office of the President. Your efforts make events like this possible. Additionally, a heartfelt thank you to our faculty, students, and staff, as well as our esteemed guests. A special acknowledgement goes to the LGBTQ+ collective for their continuous support and contributions. It is my pleasure to welcome you to the 55th Annual Herbert H. Lehman Memorial Lecture, which honors our college's namesake, a New York governor known for championing social reforms and equality during the Great Depression. His legacy of humanitarianism continues to guide our efforts today. We are honored to have with us Selenis Leyva, who has a strong connection to the City University of New York through her studies in acting and theater at Hostos Community College. And Marizol Leyva. First, Selenis, known for her impactful roles in Orange is the New Black and Lopez versus Lopez, hails from the vibrant streets of the Bronx, a place that has shaped her journey and career. Her connection to the Bronx and her recognition on the Bronx Walk of Fame speaks volumes about her contributions to the arts and her community. Alongside Selenis, Marizol Leyva, who brings her own remarkable journey as an Afro-Latina author, model, and activist from the Bronx. Marizol has been featured in prestigious publications such as Cosmopolitan, Latina Magazine, Vogue Mexico, and has been recognized for her courage by the Stonewall Foundation and Anti-Violence Project in New York City. Together as co-authors of My Sister, How One Sibling's Transition Changed Us Both, they offer an inspiring narrative of transformation and the powerful bond of sisterhood. We are thrilled to host them here today and look forward to a heartfelt conversation that promises to inspire and enlighten us all. Welcome.
Thank you.
So we're going to make this as conversational as possible. We do have a script to go off of, some written questions. And then, of course, we would love to leave some time at the end to be able to open up questions to the audience. Does that sound good to you?
Sounds great.
All right.
I have to say that I did not study at Hostos.
Oh,
I studied at Marymount College in New York City, but I am from the Bronx, so that was correct. That was correct. So I was like, oh, I love Hostos, but I didn't go there. And it got such a big round of applause, I felt like an imposter, but no. Just look at that clear.
sorry, thank you for the fact check. No imposter syndrome here. This is, it's a pleasure to have you here, and apologies for the incorrect tidbit there. You are a Bronx native, so of that much we're sure.
Yes, very proud.
So let me ask, what inspired you both to write this book together, and what do you hope readers will take away from it? Want to start first?
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Do a mic test?
They can hear her.
Okay.
Yeah, you're
Hi,
good.
everyone. How's everyone doing? What inspired us to do this book was basically, one day my sister came up to me, and it was during the time when Caitlyn Jenner was coming out with her article and gracing the cover of Vanity Fair. And there was something about that didn't sit well with us because it wasn't the representation of someone who looks like me or someone who looks like a lot of people in the crowd here today. And I wanted to share my story and have the opportunity because she came to me, hey, what do you think about doing a book? And I got a little pushback because it's like, wow, like a book and putting your life out there is like a big thing to do, especially at the time I was living in South. I wasn't really publicly trans like that. Only my close people knew about that. And I had to sit with it for a few days, and I realized, wow, like this is an opportunity that many don't get in their lifetime as a trans person of color at that. So I said to myself, I need to take this opportunity to this is bigger than me and for my community, and to be able to show someone who looks like me that they can take up space and they can write their stories and be in charge of their story instead of someone else writing it for them.
Yeah, and thank you. You know, I always say thanks for Marisol for trusting me, because I know that was like a big ask, you know, when I said, I think we should write this book. And I knew that it was going to be hard. It was really difficult, but I knew it was important, because what happens a lot, especially in Black, brown communities, is that we don't talk about LGBTQ+. We don't talk about the hard stuff. We don't, you know, we tend to kind of push it off to the side. And I wanted to also show that not all of the stories that deal with LGBTQ+ are sad. You know, this was about love, this is courage, this is acceptance, and respect. So I wanted that. I wanted a story that reflected that. The possibility of that is real. And it happened in our family, and we wanted to give that to our community.
That's beautiful. That's I love that, because we don't often get that positive spin. We don't hear the success stories enough. But Marisol, I appreciate that you jumped right into it. And sometimes in order to get to the success story, you do have to go through the dark, right?
Absolutely.
I want to follow up on something that you just spoke about. Your story sheds light on the unique challenges faced by trans women of color. What do you think are the most pressing issues still facing the community today?
I think some of the issues today, specifically in this climate, is that our rights are being stripped away. And it's dehumanizing. I can't fathom the idea that basic human rights are up for debates. You know, a lot of my community members are still dealing with being harassed, discriminated against, aren't allowed to change their right documents. You know, we've always had a struggle in our community. And regardless of that struggle, I want people to know that we are resilient and powerful no matter what, that we will overcome this and things will change as long as we keep our voices high and loud.
And that struggle, you know, I think whether we like it or not, is sometimes it's happening in the public eye, which leads me to ask about whether or not your fame, Selenis, did it contribute? Did it hinder your progress, Marisol? How did celebrity factor into you being in the hot seat, so to speak? How were you able to share your story with that level of, let's say, scrutiny? Was it positive, or did it have more of a negative impact?
I would have to say that I guess the more vocal I became about it, the more negative I got from people, like under the comments and messages and things like that. And it's also just putting myself out there for other people to attack me in person. Or feel like they can approach me a certain way. And not just myself, but this is like, I represent my community, so these are things that happen to others. But with my sister's fame, that has opened doors for me to be able to have certain opportunities, but not many people that are trans are not going to be in that type of room. They're doctors, they're lawyers, they're teachers, there are many things. And I think that with what I do with my art is I always want to showcase that we do all different kinds of things, and whichever way we can, we will advocate through that. And I think that's like the best thing we could do, just taking up space, being present.
And that's vulnerability, right? And thank you for being vulnerable. Selenis, how did you see it from your end?
I think that, yeah, for me, it gave me, you know, having a platform meant that people suddenly really wanted to hear what I had to say. You know, you show up to places, and usually it's like people think, you know, actors and people, it's so vapid. You just show up to red carpets, you pose, and you keep it moving. And a lot of people do that. And I felt like it was important to use my platform, to use the height of Orange is the New Black, to use that moment to say something. What am I passionate about? What am I passionate about? I'm passionate about people's human rights. I'm passionate about reproductive rights. I'm passionate about LGBTQ+. I'm passionate about immigrants. My parents are immigrants. I'm passionate about things that don't necessarily concern glitz and glamour, right? And I knew that my platform could be used for something good. And I knew that I could give my sister an opportunity to share her story, and in doing so, help others. So, and listen, I also got back, I got a lot of hate, because as long as you keep your mouth shut, it's fine, but as soon as you start making noise, people don't like that. I lost about 300,000 followers in the last 4 years, and I say, good riddance. You're not my people. If you don't like what I have to say, you don't like what I stand for, you don't like my book, you don't like my sister, good riddance. So, but that's the kind of backlash that I got, that it was immediate. And there are times that, people say, don't be careful what you have to say, especially if you're under contract with certain companies, and that's hard, but I do feel that we have to stand for something, and especially now more than ever.
I 100% agree. Well said. So I want to piggyback off that a little bit. Selenis, you mentioned in the book that you initially struggled to understand Marizol's identity. Can you talk about the biggest misconceptions you had to unlearn? And maybe I'll couple that with some of the misconceptions that maybe your family had to learn in the process as well.
I think, when Marizol, I knew from a very early age that Marizol was definitely in the wrong body, that there was something that was not connected to this little person that I was interacting with. And one of the biggest misconceptions that I keep hearing, and this is lack of knowledge, is you choose, she chose to do this. Somebody taught her to do this. Somebody told her. No, she was born this way. And I knew that from a very early age. I didn't have the language. I didn't know, but I knew that something was different with this little person,
Sure.
And I didn't understand it. I didn't know it. I didn't have the words. I didn't have the vocabulary. I wish I had, but I didn't, we weren't around, no one in our family was trans, and, we knew gay people, we knew lesbian, right? And when we thought about trans, we weren't thinking about trans. We were thinking about, people dressed like women. We didn't have the vocabulary at the time. And so I had to kind of, on my own, figure it out. And because I'm in the arts, I met a lot of wonderful people, artists. And that was my first time meeting a trans woman in this theater company that I worked for. It was like underground. I'm talking about, we were so underground. We were so underground, I'm not even joking. I mean, it was like a bodega going down I'm not joking, like a bodega, those, and going down the stairs, and it was like, welcome to theater. That was my start, so I've paid my dues. But in that world, I met wonderful people, part of the LGBTQ+ community, wonderful people that I saw affected by the AIDS epidemic, wonderful people that taught me so much about life other than what I had been exposed to. And there was this trans woman that I met, and she was this beautiful Asian woman, and someone said to me, well, she's trans. And I was like, well, what does that mean? I didn't know. And then they explained, and I said, okay. So then I said, interesting, okay. And when Marizol came out to me at the age of 16, before her transition, she said, I'm gay. And I said, girl. Well, I didn't say girl at the time. I was like, you sure it's just that? Because, and that's when I said, but do you want to be a woman? And maybe my question was worded wrong, but I just knew that there was more to it, And so here we are.
Here we are.
So it's, again, going back to that public piece, right? We're supplying the public with the toolkits with which they're to utilize how they treat us. And I think that conversations like this are crucial because this is part of giving the public, I think, that toolkit, dispelling some of the myths, and just humanizing, I think, the story. I do want to ask the same question to you, though, Marizol. Can you talk about some big misconceptions that you felt folks had to unlearn, whether it's society at large or your family? I really want to get to the family piece because I love how your family came around.
Yes. A lot of the misconceptions that society has is that, you know, growing up, the misconception that I saw for myself and trying to find myself, my identity, and see where I fit in was basically, you know, the Jerry Springers, the Mauries, like the man in the dress. And I'm like, that's not who I am. Like, I don't identify as that. I don't see myself like that. And it was considered like the freak over there. Yeah. And with that being said, I was bullied in school. So it was like, how do I get to express myself in a way that I feel safe and people are like able to take me in, right? When these are the preconceived notions that people have, the majority of society has, especially 10 years ago and during my teenage years, over 20 years ago. I'm giving my age up, oh my God. But
Jerry Springer.
So, you know, those are like some of the preconceived notions, and I think that this book definitely allows to change that. Like you said, giving the tools to those who are willing to learn. Because someone who does not want to learn is not going to want to have these conversations. Someone who wants to learn and is curious is going to pick up this book and say, I want to be a better human being and contribute to society and treating everyone with respect.
Wonderful, wonderfully said. So I want to switch to another question going back. I'm going to get you to talk about your family. So Marisol, what were some of the proudest moments throughout your journey, whether personal, professional, or within your family? Underline within your family.
One of the precious moments was like me and my dad like reuniting.
I love it.
For those who haven't read the book, you will see what I'm talking about in this moment. You know, I spent almost probably like a few years away from my family. At 16, going on 17, I was out in the streets, like practically homeless. And that just wasn't, just to be clear, that just wasn't because of my transness. It was the actions that I took that were the consequences of me being out the house. And so with that experience, you know, I experienced a lot of things. I've seen a lot of things from both lenses, from people who live different from me and living with other people. And so just being that said, I was able to get back on having a relationship with our dad because of my sister. She was the mediator throughout this whole journey, because I still communicated with my sister throughout that time, and my mother. And, you know, my dad still wasn't there yet, and I was already transitioning. As soon as I left the house, I was like, okay, this is my moment to do it. Like, because there was this big thing about transitioning at home that I felt like I was not going to be able to do it, because I really cared about what my family had to say. Like, it was one thing, like, okay, you gay, that's fine. You want to be feminine, fine, but don't do that. So I was like, okay, this is my get out of free jail card to transition and live my life. But once I came back home, I go back to Christmas, and my dad opens arms and he asks me to dance with him, and he says, you know what, I love you, you are beautiful, and you are my daughter. And that's one of the precious moments that I think about when you ask that question.
Yeah, I love that. That's amazing.
And our father is Cuban, old school, you know, we're talking about, you know, men do this, women do that, and, you know, and that was such a big moment for our father. And to this day, My father will never use the wrong pronouns. My father, there is respect, from that moment, my father literally, it was just like another human being. Someone who understood and who realized this is my child regardless. I'm gonna love her and I'm gonna protect her. And that's been a beautiful journey to watch, because again, it can happen. It can. And we're so used to hearing stories about it not working out and families kicking their loved ones out. But in this case, my father, again, a Cuban man, was like, and my mother, a Catholic woman who goes to church every Sunday and is very very God-fearing, and she said, this is my child. God doesn't make any mistakes. And I think that's what, if you have God in your heart, that's really the message.
Right.
Love that. Yeah. So, so many things are swirling through my head as you're talking. I just lost the thought that I had while you were both speaking. I was actually wrapped up very much in what you were saying. I'm going to pose a question and hope to get back to the one that I just lost. So along the same thread, what advice would you give to families struggling to support a loved one through transition?
I think the best advice I can give to families is to lead with an open heart, lead with love, right? Because we are talking about your children, and you should be leading with unconditional love and setting your children to go into the world and be good human beings. And I understand that sometimes we may not have that background, but the best advice is just lead with love and open arms and understanding. Pick up a book, look and seek for organizations that can give you the tools that you need to help you as well. Like in the book, there are also many other organizations that helps family if they're going through what we went through as a family, or whatever case it may be. Like, just leading with love, honestly, like just being open to having the conversations. Because I think sometimes, because of the preconceived notion that society has made about trans people, they're leading with that, and they understand, they see the type of behavior and the way they treat us, that they don't want their child to go through that. So they don't want nothing to do with that. They'd rather just steer away and play safe. But you're doing a disservice to that child and to when they go out into the world and how they're going to be treated,
Yeah, I think that that's part of, how do we prepare folks of a generation above us who the buck does tend to stop with that golden rule, right? Treat others how you would want to be treated, except it goes deeper than that, right? Sometimes you have to just delve, I think, a little bit deeper than just, oh, if I treat you how, I want to be treated, everything will be fine.
Yeah.
It actually won't. You have to tease out, I think, some of the more intricate problems there are in society, and this is certainly one of them. You don't often hear the story of the dad who's come around to fully embrace his gay son or his trans daughter. To me, I find that to be one of the most heartening things.
Especially in Black and brown communities.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You want to talk a little bit more about that, about machismo and just...
machismo. I mean, we all know what that is. At the age of 21, my uncle turned to me. He's like, "And when are you getting married?" And I was like, "What?" And he's like, "Yeah, you're gonna, gosh, who's gonna want you? She's getting up there." And I was like, "Oh my goodness." So there's that, and that's a big deal. And thinking about family, and thinking about one of the things that was really hard for me in Marizol's transition, right, was the fear that I was losing my little brother. Because I was like, okay, great. She's now this beautiful, smart, all of the things, and finally happy, but where's my brother? And I mourned that, and it was so hard. And I remember feeling guilty about mourning that. And then I saw her, we went out. It was the first time I met Marizol. And I looked into her eyes, and I wrote about it in the book, and I saw that person, the person that I thought I had lost, the person that I thought no longer existed. I saw it, because you know, the eyes are the mirrors to the soul, right? And I looked, and I went, oh, they're there. They're still there. And they're there now in all of their glory. They're there now in the right way. They're there now and they're happy. Because I knew that my sister would not be here had she not transitioned and really like owned that part. I know that for a fact. And so, again, what I say to everyone is, if you have someone in your life that is transitioning, if you have someone in your life that is part of the LGBTQ plus community, you have to support. Because at the core, what do we all want? At the core, we all want to be loved.
Absolutely.
We all want security. We all want to fit in, you know? And so if you hold on to that knowledge, that what do we all want at the core? What do I want at my core? Well, that means, why doesn't she want it? Why doesn't he want it? We all are on the same page with that. So that to me was one of those aha moments where I was like, oh my goodness, I'm mourning something that really will never leave.
Yeah.
You know, it's there.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
I remember I had the pleasure of meeting you, Marisol, when you were inducted, Selenis, into the Bronx Walk of Fame on the Grand Concourse. For folks that don't know, there's a stretch of the Grand Concourse past 161st Street, south of 161. Am I getting that right, Olga?
It's been expanded north.
Oh, and it's a little bit
Because
north.
there's so much greatness that comes
Exactly.
from the Bronx.
Yeah,
Period.
for sure. I just want to add, I too am a Bronx native, lifelong resident, so I was really proud, I have to say. I think I'm going to have a vulnerable moment here. I cried in the car with Olga going home that night. Olga worked with me at the Bronx Borough President's office, and she was instrumental in putting that all together. And I just thought, how incredible that you had this opportunity to stand before your family. You know, our families are complicated, every family. Your family has the cultural piece when it comes to your identity, Marisol. So many things play into the complications of family. But in that moment, to be able to see you all come together and celebrate your success.
It's a big deal.
It was, I cried. I'm not
Yeah.
even going to lie to you. I thought, that's it. You're living the dream. That is to be able to stand before your family and do that. And then to take it to the next level, Selenis, because Marisol, when I met you, the moment I set eyes on you, I adored you. I thought you were just, you have such a light
So sweet.
to you. And I know you as I met you, right? And the person that I met was beautiful. So I thought, how incredible to extend that moment to be able to platform Marizol and give voice to something that I think is often silenced, or like we're currently facing, that erasure of history. So you've been talking a little bit about, you know, each of your separate parts, right? What you felt observing Marizol. Marizol, what you experienced from being out of the house to returning back. At what point would you say that this became a joint effort? What was that moment where you said, we're going to write this book, we're going to platform this, we're going to take that risk?
Yeah. Well, like Marisol mentioned, it was the Caitlyn Jenner, and I hate mentioning her name.
Oh my goodness.
Her. When she was given the cover of the Vanity, right? Vanity Fair cover. And I remember going, oh, wow, you know, I mean, good for her. And then it just didn't sit well because it was so gross in how it was presented. It was so, what is the word? It was not earned.
Not graceful.
it was so, it just was not relatable. It was not our community. It was not her community. It was not the people that I know. Before, look, I've done a lot of work with the LGBTQ plus community, and I have gone into shelters and homes and really advocated. And that was not a reflection. That Vanity Fair article and that was not a reflection. And I thought, not everyone has access to the best surgeons in the world. Not everyone can get everything done. Boom, 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 have covers on magazines, be given awards. You know, that's not part of the community. That's not real. And I said, what is missing? Why does it bother me so much? And I knew it bothered me because I had a sister who didn't have the luxuries of saying, I am trans. And no, she had to go, I'm trans, and I hope I don't get attacked on the street. I hope I make it home. I hope I get a job. I hope, you know, all these things. And so that's when it clicked, and I said, her story needs to be told. And it started with an article I wrote. Right, Lori? I wrote an article, and it was featured, and I wrote down all my feelings about the correlation of this Vanity Fair and my sister and the community. And someone said, wow, well, you have a lot to say. You should write a book. And I was like, I'm an actress. I don't write books, you know. And then I thought about it. I said, why not? I always tell people, you know, do whatever you want, you know, sky's the limit. And I called her, and I said, listen up. You could say no, but I have this idea. What do you think about writing a story, a book on our lives, your life and my life, and how we were while you transitioned? We could do it together. And she was like quiet on the other end. And I think it was kind of a disbelief maybe, but almost like, oh,
wait,
me?
Me? Yeah, it was very that, you know, because my experiences were based off like how I saw myself, and maybe like, I guess thinking now, the current self me now, I retract those times, and I think that like, I was coming from a place that like, I'm not deserving of this. Like, I'm trans. The world has showed me how we can't be accepted, or we cannot be allowed to be authors or take up space or even take charge of our own stories, because the stories that have been told have been by people who don't look like us.
Yeah. And then when they are told on the cover of Vanity Fair, and then you're getting back to that Jerry Springer-ish,
Yes.
that sort of, I don't want to say too much, but you know, it's a stereotype almost that you're trying so adamantly to defy, and then here it is on the cover of Vanity Fair, like shamelessly.
Yes.
And I just want to add to that, like
Please.
it was done during a time where, you know, Laverne Cox, one of the first trans women to grace Orange is the New Black, right? And giving the opportunity, as articulate as she is, to be able to advocate for the community, right? And spread this light and people understanding who we are. And then here comes Caitlyn Jenner splattered on Vanity Fair, and then it's an uproar. It kind of felt like the community felt like it kind of messed the journey up of where we were going.
Yeah.
Because now,
And look where she is now, right? Look what she's done with the community. Nothing.
Nothing.
So there's that part. So I think that someone like my sister, someone like Laverne, and countless others that are out there really doing the work, marching the march, you know, and taking hold of everything and saying, this is what we need to do, was important. And I knew that I didn't want to tell her story. I wanted her to tell her story. I wanted to use my platform, and I also knew that it was going to be more powerful if me as a cis woman said, this is my story, but this is how it correlates to my sister, and who happens to be trans. But I wanted her to tell her story, and I thought that was important.
yes.
That's great. So I do want to, since we're on that sort of topic, I do want to ask another question about not cultural expectations. Where did I just lost my spot? I apologize. There we go. The portrayal of transgender individuals in the media. And you had mentioned Laverne Cox also I think of Pose, which is a wonderful show. How do you think the portrayal has evolved, or has it? Do you think that the portrayal in the media is evolving? Do you think it's continuing to pigeonhole? I'll start by just saying one thing. I remember growing up and I saw Will and Grace, and I remember seeing this Will, or which Jack was the one who was more flamboyant, and Jack was the one that was like, the stereotype or whatever, and that was one of the first depictions you would see in media, about mainstream media, thank you. And I had mixed feelings about it, because I was like, what is this? Is this the representation? So with that sort of in mind, where do you think the media stands with the portrayal of transgender individuals? Do you have those same reservations that maybe I had, like with Will and Grace?
Absolutely. I think that media could do better in representing trans people in the way they represent us, because often in time when there is media surfacing about us, it's a narrative that they're spewing rather than the reality of our life experiences. These days everything is about a clickbait, and also, the agenda of, again, dehumanizing the trans community. But I do think that we have evolved, regardless of the negative. We've definitely come a long way. And although there are many organizations that do support trans people, LGBT people, who do cater to media as well and are representing us in a good light. So it's like a 50-50, But I think that those who are not on our side, or who may not know about our community, should probably educate themselves before they put articles out.
Yeah, for certain. I wanted to ask, I know you had mentioned a little bit, you had touched on some organizations. So for students and faculty here today, what are some concrete actions they can take to be better allies in their own communities? Maybe you can mention some of those organizations if they're front of mind, or you can just give some tidbits on how to be.
Some of the organizations are the Anti-Violence Project, the Store One In Foundation. We also have the Ali Fournay Center. It's where I actually stood for a few months when I was homeless. That changed my life, and they cater to all LGBT people and even people outside of the community. My community is very opening to all types of people. You don't have to be LGBT to get support and love and acceptance. And if we could showcase that, why can others do the same, right? So I think those are some of the organizations, and some of the things that our allies could do is that if you see something, say something. If someone's being treated with, disrespect or dehumanized or even near to violence, speak up and stand up for someone, because often in times no one does stand up for us, and you would change that person's perception on how they move on in life. You would be a hero to them, honestly.
And I think we're seeing it more and more, especially now, where a lot of people are like, well, that doesn't affect me. That's not my problem. That's not about me. Oh, yeah, it is. Because as soon as they're done dehumanizing and stomping on one group, they'll get to you eventually. You know what I mean? So trust me on that. I think that we all have to have more compassion, and just because you don't understand doesn't mean it's wrong. Like Marisol says, read up on it, educate yourself. It's not her responsibility anymore to educate people. It's your responsibility to educate yourself about your neighbors, about your community, about people in your own family, people that you go to school with, people that you interact with, maybe people that you sit with on the train. Open yourselves up to the world outside of your own bubble. That will make this world a better place, I guarantee you. Absolutely. It takes very little to be compassionate. It takes a lot more energy to be hateful. So I invite you all to have more compassion. Read our book. Spread the word. It comes in Spanish also. Sneak it in there and leave it on the table. We've gotten a lot of letters from around the world of people thanking us because of our book. They were able to speak to their grandmother or speak to a parent. It doesn't always turn out like it did for Marisol, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't plant a seed. It plants a seed of hope. And as long as we have that going, it's going to be a better place. And I know that sounds so hokey and cliche and so, like kumbaya, but really we need to do more to just be better people, better humans. It doesn't take a lot to do that. So I invite you all to have compassion. And like Marisol says, if you see something, if you don't, someone's acting a certain way or someone says something, look, sometimes even around me, people will be like, oh, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, excuse me? And, and I've learned that you don't have to be violent. You could just educate people with 1 or 2 sentences, and it plants a seed.
The book is a resource,
Yeah.
right? So where is the book accessible? Where would you recommend people go to get the book? I know it's on Amazon.
Yes.
Everything's on Amazon.
Everything's
but,
on Amazon.
It's on Amazon, Barnes & Noble,
Barnes
and Noble.
Target.
Perfect. So it's pretty, it's out there. So,
And it's also, we have an audio. So, and we did the audio ourselves, and that was fun.
That was fun.
And so if you are into audio, you'll hear us telling you the story.
That's lovely. I do want to open it up to questions from the audience, but before I do, I have one, might be my last question. If you can go back in time and give your younger selves one piece of advice, what would it be?
I'll start. It's going to be very simple. If I could give one advice to my younger self, it would be that you are worthy, that you matter, you deserve to take up space.
Have you ever heard the song by India Ari called Worthy?
Yes.
It's such a beautiful song. She says, baby girl, worthy woman, every one of us is worthy. And she's talking not just to women, she's talking to every single one of us. It's such a beautiful song. When you said it, it reminded me of that. Every one of us is worthy, Marisol, absolutely.
Yes.
What about you, Selenis? What would you say to your younger self?
I would say it's going to work out.
Yeah, that's what's up.
It might take a little longer than you thought, but it's going to work out. I think that my favorite thing when Orange was, I had been working before Orange is the New Black. I've been making a living as an actor. Not famous, but making a living. And when Orange is the New Black came out, every interview would be like, how does it feel to be an overnight success? And I was like, it took me 20 years. So, I would say to my younger self, it's going to work out. It's going to take longer. Be patient, girl, but it will work out.
That's great advice.
Yeah.
Excellent advice. So I want to open it up. I don't know if anybody is fielding questions. If we have a floating mic.
We have a mic over here. Oh, look, they're ready.
Raise your hand high. Oh,
Wait.
Brittany?
Wait, someone.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Hi.
Hi.
Am I good? Okay. Hi, my name is Bethany. This was a wonderful panel. Selenis, I am a huge fan. Thank you for everything. I'm also you're not. I am a struggling actor. So thank you.
Oh, wait, but you know what? The first narrative is no struggle. You are an actor.
Thank
That's
you.
right.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Oh my God. And you're a huge inspiration as a fellow Latina actress coming from the Bronx. And thank you for the motivation. I don't want to cry right now. It's like very surreal to see you in person. So thank you. And Marisol, thank you for being here yourself, wonderful, beautiful. And not everybody who's in a group that's a minority needs to be an activist, but you are. And that's a very tough job. And thank you so much. And thank you for being wonderful.
Thank you.
And thank you for sharing that about your father coming around. I grew up with a Pentecostal dad. If y'all know the vibes, you know the vibes about that, Pentecostalism. And he is still a Christian, but sort of out of that denomination. And it was one of the most beautiful things growing up, seeing him becoming accepting of the LGBT community to the point that he educates his siblings who are still very religious in that Pentecostal Jehovah's Witness, and telling them that let's accept people, let's love them. Jesus did not judge people, and who are we to sit here and do that? And I guess my question for you, Marisol, would be that would you have any advice to the trans youth growing up who also experience homelessness and being on the street? There's a lot of statistics and studies of trans youth being homeless, one, falling into sex work, even being underage and not having the support. What would you say to them to stay safe? Where places they should look? What should they do? How to protect their body and their minds?
I think that a few places that they can go to is Cat and Lord, the LGBT Center in 14th Street, the Stonewall Foundation, Anti-Violence Project, Ali Fournier Center. These are all centers that cater to, youth who are struggling with homelessness, who are struggling with jobs, or who may be doing SW work, and they need a place of guidance, a place with the tools to be able to get out of that work and be able to create resumes. These are all places that really put you in place to be successful. I am a witness of that myself, from coming from Ali Fournier and getting my first job from there. So these are all things that, we may not feel like we have the access to, because I at one point didn't think that I could go to these places until a friend of my sister who recommended that I should go here. And if it wasn't for her friend, I would have not known of that place. So now I pass the baton. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you for coming again. I'm so inspired by you, Marisol. Just hearing your story a little bit, and I'm gonna read the book as well. I want to thank you for letting us hear and getting personal with us and letting us, go through the journey with you a little bit. My question, though, to you and your sister, I wanted to know, I know you've been in the industry. Right now I'm in the industry as well. I do digital music. I'm an engineer. And I'm also part of the LGBT community. So we not always receive well, right? And even as a woman in the minority and, and having a high position, you probably won't be received well. So I want to know, when that happens, either what a situation, a scenario, or what would your mindset be? Going forward, getting through that, and going to the next stage. I'm in a point in my life where I'm just trying to go through and push forward and be great and never settle for less and use 100% focus. But everybody don't always receive that well. So I just want to know what you guys think and what kind of advice you could give to someone like me.
Move forward unapologetically. Move forward unapologetically. You don't have to ask permission to take up space, like Marisol says. You make sure it's, it's your world. And for me, as a woman of color, I have faced from the very beginning of my career to, not so much now, because now I'm just like, nope, I'm just not dealing with it. Nope, this is who I am, take it or leave it. And I love myself so much more than I ever have in my entire life that I will settle for absolutely zero disrespect. And I don't even get it. I think I walk in the room, this is it, and there's something about that when you have confidence. It's not about being a narcissist. It's not about ego. It's just confidence. When you love you, there is no stopping you, and you can come in whatever form you are, and you will command respect. So just own who you are, and I'm telling you that. I wish I could tell that to myself 20, plus years ago. Yeah. Girl, own it. Walk into the room. Nobody's like you. And now that's how I live my life. There is no one like me. There is no one like you. So own that and know that whatever gift you have, no one else has it. And it not with ego, but with love and respect, own it. That's what I could tell you.
The best advice I have for you is take up all the space you can. because you belong to be in those spaces, right? I was listening, you asking that question, and I'm also going through that as well as I'm venturing into music. And I've definitely been a lot of no's, right? But has that stopped me? No. So I want you not to stop because maybe someone may not take you in. Take that as a sign that it just wasn't meant to be. That your journey is, you're going to be aligned with someone who's for you, and you will see.
And it's going to work out.
Yeah.
It will work out.
We're going to take one more question, and then a group
Yes.
photo, I guess.
That's great. Well, thank you so much. It's an honor just to hear your stories. They're incredible. I do want to touch on something that we often don't talk a lot, which is mental health. And I wanted to share, for you to share your experience about how did you manage? Did you go through a process of insecurity and all these mental health issues that our youngsters now don't know how to manage? Was that present as you were going through this transition?
Absolutely, absolutely. It definitely was present. You know, I think that in my adulthood, I was able to manage that better on how to articulate myself and the emotions and feelings that I was going through as a young child. Even with the book, right, we had to get in therapy.
That's the first thing I said to her. I was like, go to therapy. We're going to hit a lot of things that go to therapy.
Yes, yes. And, you know, therapy was very helpful. It definitely guided me into the right direction. And it's so true that you're saying right now, but the youth, they don't have the access or where to turn to. And I think that we should start creating more spaces, safe spaces, to be able to have these youth come in and feel like they can express themselves, because it may not be safe for them at home. These are things that need to be taken into consideration. And so my best advice to them is to hold on, seek help, look for tools, organizations, because they're really out there. They're out there. You just have to maybe just apply a little of yourself, and you shall receive.
And I think even in your own, you know, communities, there's programs in schools. I'm sure here in Lehman, there's, you know, places and people that you can turn to. A lot of us in this room, I'm sure, come from backgrounds and homes where we don't talk about mental health. We don't talk. It's like, why are you sad? There's no reason to be sad. Get over it. You know, you want to stay sad, you know, and then they go into their world. But I think that you have to just, you know, there is so much power in saying, I need help. I want to talk to someone. It's actually, it's strength. When you get to a place and you're like, I really need help. There was a point in my life where I turned to, you know, to get help, because I knew that I wouldn't be sitting here had I not turned and said, you know what, I do need help. And I was seeing a psychologist, a psychiatrist. I was on antidepressants for a while. And if I hadn't done that, I know I would not be here.
Yeah.
Because it got very dark for me. Very, very, and it was painful. It was one of the most painful moments where I was like, why am I sad? Why am I feeling these things? I have a daughter. I'm happy, right? I'm supposed to be happy, but I wasn't happy. And had I not gotten on antidepressants and gotten me through, my first 2 years of Orange, I was on antidepressants because I needed it. And everyone around me was like, oh my God, you're on that show, you're so great. And I was like holding on for dear life, you know. So you never know what someone is going through personally. And I say to you, if you find yourself in a place where you are, when you need help, there is nothing wrong with seeking help. There is nothing wrong with getting on an antidepressant. There is nothing wrong with that. And if anyone tells you that there's something wrong, don't listen to them and help yourself. Yeah. Because I think that's the biggest thing, especially in our communities. Mm-hmm. It's shunned upon. So there's no shame in it.
It's the biggest investment you can make in yourself,
right?
To decide that you may need intervention of some kind, and then you seek it. And, you know, while we're on the subject of destigmatization, right, that's one of the things we have to destigmatize, centering our mental health and our well-being. I want to say, although you did not go to Hostos,
Did not. It's a great place, though.
you and Marizol are now, a part of the CUNY galaxy, and two of the brightest stars we've had so far in our orbit. Thank you so much for being here, Marizol, for sharing your story. Selenis for
Thank you for having us.
Of
Yes,
course, I'm happy to see you guys again, and for platforming,
Thank
Selenis. Thanks. A round of applause.
Thank you.